Greetings and welcome back. Becoming Undone is a podcast for those who dare bravely, risk mightily, and grow relentlessly. Join me, Toby Brooks, as I invite a new guest each week where we can examine how high achievers can transform from falling apart to falling into place. Y'all, I'm really excited about this one. Former student, was always kind of a bright ray of sunlight in the front half of the room. You were always, kind of there on the right for me. Morgan Detrixhe joining me today from the Dallas area. Morgan, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So today you are at Children's Health Andrews Institute for Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. You've got a history with FC Dallas. You are a sports medicine professional. I remember you from your days back at Texas Tech and several stories about you as a competitive athlete. But your story goes a lot deeper than that. Before we get into that, I always like to kind of start at the beginning. Take me back. What did you want to be growing up and why?
So, growing up, I'm born and raised in Lubbock, Texas. And it's funny how I ended up back at Texas Tech. It's like Lubbock or leave it, right? Um, you, I, I was always a very active kid, and I never wanted to be in one place. And my mom tried to keep me very busy with all kinds of sports and stuff. And for whatever reason, my dreams were to become a professional soccer player. I really thought that that was going to happen. Um, it took reality and several injuries and whatnot for me to shift my mindset, um, that I was not going to become a professional soccer player, and that's okay. But yeah, I think from my earliest memories, I really wanted to revolve my life around soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of us in athletic training, and I usually use that as an intro question to a lot of my students is, what sport did you play growing up? And, when did that end for you? Because most of us are hangers on and has-beens and never wases. And athletic training allows us to stay involved in sport,
Yeah.
even when playing is no longer an option. So you end up at Texas Tech and eventually in my classroom at the HSC. So kind of talk me through the college years and how you made the decision to pursue that career.
So I got involved with soccer at the age of 4, but I was the little kid picking dandelions, on the field and not paying attention to the game. And then it's funny because my dad had to pull me out of the game. This is what my parents tell me. And I'm over there on the sideline and I'm like, "Mom, can I color? Can I do the coloring book or whatever?" And she's like, "No, we're gonna go sit in the car. If you want to play soccer, then you can go play soccer." And I was like, "Fine, I'll go play." And then once I admitted that I was gonna go actually play, I'm having fun, I'm chasing the ball around, and then like actually involved in the game. And then I was like, "Dad, that was fun. When do we get to go play again next week?" And he's like, "No, Morgan, that was the last game of the season. You're gonna have to wait a couple months." And from there, I really got into soccer, and I had a couple of college scholarships. Where in high school, summer camps involved like going to different colleges and doing the little camps and just, networking and trying to like engage with coaches on, if I was eventually going to play for them. And my senior year, I had I think they call it the triad, the female triad, where you have
Hmm.
your ACL, your meniscus, and your MCL. I did, totally blew that out, and ended up having to have that repaired and reconstructed in my spring semester of my senior year. So I lost a lot of offers, and a junior college took a chance on me and brought me on. So I went from that junior college, lost that scholarship, went to another junior college, and I was ejected from a car at that point. And so in the spring of 2014 is when I went back home to Lubbock. And I guess we can get into those stories in a bit, but um, I went back to Lubbock and I decided, you know what? I'm not going to try to keep playing soccer anymore. And I told my college coach that summer after the end of the semester, hey, I'm not going to come back in the fall. And I ended up staying at Texas Tech and finishing school. And through all my rehab processes of the knee surgery and the hip experience, I was like, I want to help kids, you know, get back into their sport after they have an injury and help them do what I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. And so that's when I finished undergrad and then got into the grad school program with you
Yeah.
guys at Texas Tech.
Right. Well, I think there's a really critical thing I want to kind of pull at a thread there.
Okay.
You're a competitive athlete and a high level one. I mean, you're recruited by a number of colleges. And on one side, there's the physical side of that. And soccer in particular requires elite level conditioning. I always make fun of it as cross country with a ball. I know it's more beautiful and elegant than that for soccer people, but the cardiovascular conditioning, the speed and agility, I mean, that's elite level athleticism. And I know for myself, I always wanted to kind of squeeze every ounce I could out. So my grandfather was an alcoholic. I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. My parents smoked. I mean, I was terrified of addiction because I'd heard
Uh-huh.
about the genetic link, and I wanted to be the best basketball player I could be. Talk me through a little bit about your perception or how you approached maybe your physical preparation in those early years, and how maybe that played a role in your story later on.
I took it all for granted, you know. I try to stay very active these days, and I'm in fair shape for my age, but I am nowhere close to soccer shape like I used to be in. And I used to play like 5 90-minute games in one weekend sometimes, and it just did not phase me. And so that's just, there's that quote, like youth is wasted on the youth.
Yeah.
And I definitely took it for granted. My parents were very involved. They were very supportive. Um, and they warned me about alcoholism running on both sides of my family with my mom's dad and my dad's dad, and I never got to meet either of those guys. And um they warned me early on in high school, like, we're going to be careful, we have alcoholism on both sides of our family. And I'd just be like, yeah, okay. And I just didn't know what that meant or what that looked like. I just thought I was a normal kid getting engaged with the partying life. Um, and I think that being attracted to the party scene, it definitely messed me up at becoming the athlete that I could have been. And like I said, I took it for granted. And, my parents were involved. They put me in these camps. They had me practicing with a personal trainer. I was practicing soccer 3 to 4 times a week, playing games every weekend. And then when college started, it's like a job.
Yeah.
College soccer becomes a job. And I don't think I was ready to face that
Hmm.
when college came around.
Yeah. I laugh. I mean, I'm here in Waco now, but I am definitely a tech person at heart, and I get kind of a hard time from my colleagues sometimes. And one of my friends just last week, I'd never heard. He said, "If you can't get your grades up, get your guns up," and it just kind of broke my heart a little bit. And then to see somebody like Pat Mahomes, who's in the wake of celebrating a Super Bowl, he's drinking beers and he's being asked by reporters like, is that really the look you want? And I remember him saying, like, I went to Texas Tech, like I've trained for this. I mean, definitely there's kind of a party school mantra
Yeah.
around Texas Tech, but you grew up competing. How would you say at this point your athletic identity influenced your relationship with performance, with perfectionism, with pressure? And maybe how did being at Texas Tech morph that once you left being a competitive athlete?
Okay, run that by me one more time.
Yeah, yeah. You grew up competing, and
Yes.
being a soccer player was central to who you were. If I asked 16-year-old Morgan, not just what do you want to be, but who are you, you would probably go with athlete pretty early in that list, right?
Sure. Sure.
So you've got this relationship with performance. Lots of times soccer players are much like gymnasts. I mean, perfectionism and stats and you just kind of consumed with the sport as who I am. And then you get pulled out of that basically, or you opt out of that, whether
Mhm.
that was injury helping you make that decision or other factors. So you've lost that structure of soccer and you find yourself in an environment where there's no shortage of opportunities to party, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
kind of talk me through that critical season of your transition out of competitive sport and into an environment like that.
Mm. Yeah. Oh man, it's interesting to reflect on. So the friends, my soccer friends that I grew up with in the competitive world, there was only a couple of them that continued to play college sports, and then there was a couple of them that locked in on school. And so most of us kind of stuck around in Lubbock. Some of us went to other universities, and I tried to stay in touch with a lot of those girls. But what happened when I wasn't playing soccer anymore, I started going to school at Tech. I got a real job, working at Pure Water Ice and Tea Company, because in Lubbock we need pure water,
We do.
and um, and I found myself being attracted to people that I gravitated towards in high school, which it was like the party crowd or the athletic crowd, and I was losing my connections with the athletic crowd, and a lot of that party crowd was still in Lubbock, and that's where I drifted to. I still went to school. I still went to work. I paid my sister rent because I was living with my sister Rochelle. Um, and she's like, "You don't need to live with mom and dad. You can live with me, and pay rent." And she was a really good sister, um, and didn't make me do it all by myself. And I don't know, like I was able to get stuff done as a college student, but I did get involved with this crowd of people that um, kind of changed the way that I live my life. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't know. I tried to stay active. I joined um, intramural soccer and like indoor soccer teams, um, but I would still find myself engaging in the party crowd before or after
Yeah.
my fitness um, activities.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
Well, I
yeah,
would tell you to the outside world. I mean, I'm your professor and you're fit and you're fun and you're performing in the classroom. You've got it figured out. You're not just in college at this point, you're in grad school
yeah,
and you're getting it done. And I will tell you, you sharing on social media, I was thankful for, but also a little, I don't know the word for myself, whether it was embarrassed or ashamed, or I just felt like this was going on while you were in, while our worlds were intertwined, while you were a
yeah.
student in my program or in the program that I was working in, and to know that you were struggling with this, but you had this mask. I think it's safe to say, like you weren't. It's not like anybody goes and tells their professor like their personal struggles. I get that, but there's just this kind of juxtaposition between who I thought you were and maybe what you were battling at that time in your life. So talk me through a little bit about what maybe that 2 years of grad school was like. I mean, you passed the BOC professionally, you're making connections and you're becoming a clinician. Was the addiction simmering at that point or talk me through the timeline?
You know, I think I was a blackout drinker from the beginning. My first drink, my first like initial drink or intentional drink was when I was about 14 or 15 years old. And so through high school, my parents were very concerned, but they knew that, I guess, based off their experiences as being high school kids, that was somewhat normal. And they just, kept me, I was grounded all the time. My mom had me on a travel team to Dallas to play soccer competitively. So I wasn't in Lubbock on weekends. She kept me busy. And maybe maybe I use that as a coping mechanism for stress and for being a perfectionist and to succeed in my goals as soccer specific dreams. Um, I'm not quite sure. I think there's a lot more I could go into with therapy down the road to dig into that more. But it's funny you say that because in the recovery world, there's this part in our book that we read and it calls us Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And we have these two different realities to the outside world. They see us as fun, organized, respectable professionals. And then inside, we're actually just falling apart.
Yeah.
And it took what it took for me to realize my bottom. In grad school, I looked at grad school as an opportunity to really help me grow professionally because when I was getting close to finishing college, I was still pretty lost. And I knew I wanted to be in sports medicine, but I just wasn't, I didn't feel like I had matured very much, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so I knew that grad school was really going to help me push me out of that comfort zone. And maybe I was thinking I'd kind of grow out of my alcoholic phase or my big drinking, partying phase.
Mhm.
And grad school it kept me in check because I was busy at clinicals and busy with gross anatomy for that first 12 weeks and really, really busy, right? And at this time, I was living with my parents. And so I think just subconsciously, I wasn't as drawn to that crowd anymore. And I was focusing on this. Now, don't get me wrong, after big exams, I found my chances to party. And, you know, after a long day of clinicals and class and stuff, I would have a drink or two or three or whatever. Um, so it was definitely more controlled at this time,
Mhm.
but I was still engaging in those activities. I just would say it wasn't as much as like, you know, Texas Tech trained me to be.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
didn't have tailgates all the time and we
Yeah.
weren't going to Timmy's after class
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, it's
So,
interesting you say that because you go from the structure of soccer and a demanding schedule and uh, coaches and trainers and parents who are orchestrating a lot of your life. We see that in a lot of sports, but I think clear to see that for you were in that, and that gets removed. And then grad school maybe provides a little bit of that, but it's more self-imposed. It's not like I didn't tell you when you had to work on your projects. I just said you have to get this done, and it's up to you to get that done.
mhm.
Now you graduate, and now you've passed the BOC, and at that point, it's like your life is yours to do as you please. Those external pressures or structures are no longer there. So, uh, where do you go from the graduation stage at United Supermarkets Arena to where we are today? And how did that start to influence maybe your day to day living?
Yeah. So after the BOC, I was pumped, right? My parents were very concerned for me. I was Those are my dogs.
You're good.
They say hello. um, I was I was just I was letting loose, right?
Yeah.
And applying to jobs and trying to figure out what the next step was. And um I'm kind of stuck on reflecting how your point of view, like how you could help a student, but I guess
Yeah.
we can come back to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um so moving forward into where I'm at now, right?
Hmm.
Um so after the BOC, we're getting close to graduation. I let loose. I was having fun. I'm graduating. I finished grad school. I self-willed my way through grad school and I mostly kept it together. Um, my mom, she's very concerned still because I was about to be living in Dallas by myself because that's where I wanted to be. When I admitted that I wasn't going to be a professional soccer player anymore, I think I really had dreams of helping youth athletes when they have injuries, working in a sports medicine like rehab clinic like I'm at today, um, and also providing some like peer and outreach to the soccer fields, which I'm blessed to say that that's what I'm doing, you know. And it's really cool to feel that to fulfill that dream. Um, but she was concerned for me to be living on my own in a big city where there's lots of temptation and everything. And, you know, there was one incident probably right after we graduated, before I found a position in Dallas working at an orthopedic clinic. Um, we all went out to the roof, and I mean, it wasn't even midnight by the time I got in a car with a stranger and thought it was an Uber, and the Uber brought me to my parents' house, and he was trying to open the door and get into my house, and thank God my dad answered the door, and he was like, "Morgan, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Sorry, I'm home, blah, blah, blah," and I just rushed in, and the guy that drove me home just took off running to his car and got out of there. Like, thank goodness my dad was there, you know? Um, so the situations I put myself in, my mom was just like, "What is she doing?" You know? And, we were hoping that I was going to grow out of this and for me to get through grad school and be, getting away from that old crowd of people and surrounding myself with growing professionals. And then now this is happening again. She was very concerned. And so when I moved to Dallas, um, I don't know. I don't know what happened, but I I just went right back into those old behaviors. I found people from Lubbock who moved out there, and I just gravitated towards that crowd again.
Yeah.
And, they would judge me for working so hard and they tell me to come party more, but I'd be like, but this is my job. As an athletic trainer, we know that we're working 60, 90 hours a week to achieve these goals that we want to live in the sports world. And, I just thought, when I get here, I'll be better. When I get here, I'll be better.
Yeah.
And I'd keep crossing those lines and it would just get worse and
Yeah.
worse and worse.
I can tell you from the outsider looking in, I mean, granted, social media is a sliver and it's a
Mhm.
curated sliver. People put what they want to put up there. I see you're working with FC Dallas. I mean, I'm a proud papa in a lot of ways for
Yeah.
so many students, never knowing, never having any inkling that this was going on.
Mhm.
And as athletic trainers, we're helpers. We care about people, and particularly the people that we know. So to kind of go back and maybe drill down a little bit on that idea of what maybe I or other faculty members, you are in that role now where you're working with young athletes, and maybe what are some questions we should be asking, or what are some behaviors we should be seeing, or just how could your experience help you inform someone who wants to be there and to serve people who are maybe struggling like you are struggling?
When I have these kids come in and it's not just their first knee surgery, it's their second knee surgery. And then now they've hurt something else and they just feel like they're in rehab all the time and they're not getting to engage in their sport. I kind of remember being in that position where I was just like, I just want to play. I'm burnt out. And I think at this point, this is a good time to offer different coping styles because this was when I was at the point where I was just really engaging in those party behaviors. And when I see these kids come in and I know they're burnt out and they're tired of rehab and they don't want to be there, but their parents are making them be there because they need to get stronger, um, they look tired, they look checked out, they look burnt out, you know, they're not sleeping, they're not eating. And I think we've always known to know those questions, but those are things that I really look out for. And
Mhm.
sometimes I'll ask them, I'm like, "You were up till 4 a.m.?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What were you doing? Have you been?" And I'll tell them like privately, I'm like, "Have you been drinking?"
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're going to tell me no, you know, but I think that they know that that it's on my radar, that I try to be a safe place for them, and I let them know, like, if there's anything that you need to talk about, like, I know you probably don't wanna talk to me about it, but whatever you share with me stays between me and you, and I just remind them that I'm a safe place,
Yeah.
and, um we have opportunities for within our clinic now for sports psych, and we have
Mhm.
this lady that we'll refer to if parents and the patients are willing to go that route. So I can't take on all of that, but I can say, hey, I'm listening, I hear you, I feel you, like, this is what I think we should do, and I try to refer them off to see another
Yeah.
professional that would best
Right.
help them out in that way.
Yeah. I think that's a great perspective, and certainly your experience, you wouldn't have chosen it, but it definitely has prepared you to serve and to minister in a way that if you hadn't been through that, you wouldn't be as well equipped to have those conversations. One thing that stood out to me in my conversations with people who have overcome tremendous adversity is oftentimes it starts with a single decision. There might have been a few points along the way that we see as rock bottom, but at some point we ultimately make the decision to turn and to pursue a different path. Take me back to the moment when you knew something had to change. What was your personal rock bottom, and what would you say it's meant for your identity?
Yeah. So at that time, I was working at FC Dallas and I was working 60 to 90 hours a week and getting paid 40 and just really having a hard time with the work life balance. And I know that athletic training and that position didn't make me drink the way I drank, but I knew that the way I drank and this work life balance was really not working out well.
Mhm.
Um, and I was really torn. I was trying to self will it and control it. And I think probably for about a couple years into living in Dallas, I thought, I'll do a detox, I'll do a cleanse. I kept telling myself that I was going to grow out of it and get healthier and clean and sober and um, be able to do it on my own. Now, I didn't talk to doctors about it. I didn't talk to anyone specifically about it. I just thought I could do it. And the more I fought it, it was like the worse it got. And so at this time, I before I started working at FC Dallas, I had my hip reconstruction done
Mhm.
because from that car wreck back in when I was going to school in Kansas, I ignored my hip pain for like 7 years and just thought, yeah, I broke my hip. It's gonna hurt. Um, so when I got health insurance, working as a athletic trainer in an orthopedic clinic, and they referred me to a hip specialist. I finally got that hip fixed, and I thought, I won't be in pain anymore. I won't be self-medicating anymore. I just thought that all of those things were going to really help down the road. And while at FC Dallas, I really hit this place where I couldn't imagine my life with alcohol anymore, but I couldn't imagine not living with it, and I just really felt torn, and I knew I couldn't do it by myself anymore. And so I went and sought actual help, and that took me to a treatment clinic out in Plano, and I left my job at FC Dallas, and I took 4 months to kind of get my life together and reevaluate things, and then I sought out a new job opportunity.
Yeah. And that's difficult on so many different levels, right? I mean, professional soccer as a clinician becomes almost like a substitute for those dreams young Morgan had of being a professional athlete playing
Mhm.
soccer. And so shame oftentimes gets kind of just mixed in with this, and guilt and self inflicted harm, psychologically or otherwise. You've walked a path that lots of folks maybe feel too ashamed to talk about. And there's a fine line. I mean, I know for my own personal struggles, I want to share just enough to be an inspiration, but I don't want to overshare so that people think I'm bragging about it, right? In your message back to me, when I asked you to consider being on the show, you said, I like to say that I recover out loud so that other people know the way out. Can you tell me more about that and what that mindset's meant to you as you've navigated recovery?
Yeah, I definitely relate to the shame and the guilt, especially in the beginning when I was lost and I didn't know how to move forward and I wasn't with FC Dallas anymore. Like that was a huge aspiration of mine. And then just to be like, I can't do this, I'm mentally unwell and I just can't do this. I can't pour from an empty cup anymore and take care of this job anymore. I felt defeated. I felt like I failed, and it took, it took it took some time in being recovering from alcoholism, for me to realize. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm trying to better my life and have a better future and be a better Morgan, be a better health professional, be a better member to my family, to society. And that it if someone would have planted the seed in me at a younger age, maybe I would have been able to catch on faster. But I didn't really have that. I just had my mom telling me like, "Hey, this is, you have alcoholism in your family." And I just didn't know what that meant. I'm like, "Cool, mom, thanks for letting me know." And I guess she didn't really know what to look for either because she was pretty young when her dad died. And so all of that being said, we're just trying to see what would happen. And I think after growing and going through life and realizing like, hey, I was just sick, I'm not a bad person. I was just sick. Um, I've started to be more recovery out loud
Yeah.
and share my experiences. And I get hesitant, like with this podcast. I'm like, oh gosh, talk about it to the health professional world, that's a jump. But um, you know, if if I was really struggling alone and someone that I knew or was in the same medical field as me or whatever, if I heard someone going through those struggles, I'd have some courage to be able to say like, okay, yeah, I can do this. So there was definitely a big shift and that's happened over the years. I'm just over 3 years sober now. So um yeah, I think, if we let people know that there's a way out, then they don't have to be alone
Yeah.
anymore.
Couple of things you said there that really resonate for me. First of all, the notion that addiction is illness. That wasn't something that I was raised. Like there was a town drunk and he had made poor choices and he was reaping the consequences of his poor decisions, right? That was what my perception of what it meant to be an alcoholic or an addict. And just like you said, you have an unhappy triad in your knee. You've got a hip surgery. I mean, physical injuries in athletic training, we treat those all day, every day. There's no shame. There's no stigma associated with tearing your ACL. But
Mhm.
if an athlete's struggling with depression or anxiety, suck it up. You're weak. Why can't you just will your way out of this? And I think addiction is much the same way. Uh, we just don't have the compassion for it that I
Mhm.
feel like we do with physical injuries. Have you seen that? Has that been your experience?
Oh, yeah, I mean, even before I realized what was going on within myself, I judged even the people I had partied with. I'd be like, "Oh, well, you can't go to school, you can't keep a job." I mean, at least I'm going to school. I felt very self-righteous. At least I don't look like you. I'm not the homeless man drinking out of a paper bag. And so I definitely have that had that stigma myself. And so admitting powerlessness and needing help, like that was, I was just kind of torn. I'm like, but I don't look like that. I have a job. I'm going to work. Um, it was a very difficult place to navigate, but I mean, I'm grateful I realized it. And I don't know, that makes me think about the kids I've been working with. I keep telling them to push harder and
It's a
I
fine
have
line, right?
yeah, I have my times of compassion and then I have my times where I'm like, "Okay, I'm sick of you lollygagging, like, let's go." Ugh.
Yeah, no, my one of my favorite coaches always says the key is sometimes we have to know when to hug someone around the neck, and other times we have to know when to give them a kick in the pants. And the best coach knows when to give that, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if I'm underperforming and you hug me around the neck, you've just kind of encouraged me to just send it in. Like you don't have to try hard here. And the other at the other end of the spectrum, if I'm hanging on by a thread psychologically and you kick me in the pants, who knows what's going to happen, right? So there's definitely an art to the science of motivation there. Another thing you said that is worth celebrating. I mean, 3 years sober, that's tremendous. Congratulations on that milestone. Those milestones oftentimes, to someone that's not been through it, maybe they don't understand the significance of those things. What was like the end of day one, week one, year one? What has that meant for you in your recovery process?
So I wouldn't be here without a higher power, and I found God, and I'm really grateful for that because before any of this, my parents took us to church occasionally. They grew up in the Catholic Church, and I think they were pretty resentful at nuns and that whole system, and so they didn't force that on us. And so I wasn't involved with anything that led me to having a God in my life as a child. Um, I was aware of it. I always believed in something. I just I wasn't I didn't have that relationship. And so going through treatment, they encouraged me to find people who were going through the same things, finding a recovery group, you know, and getting connected and doing those things that sober people do in recovery. And um you know, one day in, miserable, one weekend, miserable. I didn't have that coping skill anymore. And my therapist at the time was like, Morgan, you're like a baby. We just took away candy from you and you have nothing to replace it with. And so what I learned is I had this spiritual malady. I was very, very sick, mind, body, spirit. And I had to fill that with a relationship with God. And I was resistant, you know, I didn't know what prayer looked like. I didn't have that kind of training, and so it was new. And I found this woman that inspired me. She looked like she was living a full, happy life, and she gave me suggestions and recommendations, and I took them. And I stayed plugged in. And we like to say, "Be of service to those who are struggling," and to give what we were given so freely out of someone else's free time, give that to others. And so being in this recovery world, I see people, life gets good, life gets better. They got the house back, they got the job back, all these things, but then they get complacent and they
Yeah.
stop doing what's recommended. They stop relying on their higher power and they go back out. And, some of them it works for them and some of them it gets worse. And I think there's a little bit of healthy fear in me that's saying, keep doing this because it's working and whatever I was trying to do before wasn't working. And
Mhm.
so um 1 weekend, 1 month in, 1 year in, 3 years in, this has been a new way of life that I can enjoy and be of service to others and be present at my job and just be, not every day I'm 100% because I'm human, but
Mhm.
I'm as the best as I can be because I choose this way of life,
Yeah.
So that's how I stay in it.
Yeah. No, I've definitely sensed from several things that you've posted that you've found a purpose. Lots of times it's said that we throw things that are way too small into God-shaped holes, and whether that's success in sport or success in career, or sometimes it's alcohol or drugs or relationships. I mean, sometimes these are really good things
Yeah.
in an attempt to fill a perceived need in our soul that only God can fill. And it's one of the reasons I love being at Baylor now. And I love Texas Tech, but there were always, there was a point in a conversation with a student where I had to stop short. It's a state institution and I respect that. And I'm not going to try to lead you to the Lord in my office. But
Sure.
at the same time, there have been conversations where I felt like that's what I wanted to say, but I wasn't really
Mhm.
empowered to do that. So being at a private school allows me to maybe have those conversations. I can pray for my students before class. I can go that extra piece. And like you said, recovery is multifaceted. Our personhood is mental, physical, spiritual, social. If any one of those is missing, then the other three are unstable. It's like a chair with
Mhm.
four legs. If the spiritual leg is shorter than the other three, the thing rocks. It's
Yeah.
not steady. It's unstable. And that's a piece that I have, frankly, from a distance, watched you grow, and it's been so awesome to see what this path that you probably wouldn't have chose what that you probably wouldn't have chosen has allowed to grow in your life.
Mhm.
And so that's really the core of this show. Is lots of times things don't go according to plan, but what sprouts in their place is even better and bigger and more beautiful than it would have been if it would have happened exactly the way we scripted it. How
Yeah.
have you seen your dreams and goals and ambitions morph and transition since you've started down this path to recovery?
So, it's cool because professionally, I'm still working as an athletic trainer. I'm in that sports rehab clinic, and I get to be out in the soccer field as much or as little as I want to be. Lately, I've kind of taken a break from it because I got engaged and I got a house, and life is good. And that was something I never thought I'd be able to have in my life. I never thought I could have a healthy relationship. I never thought I'd get married. I never thought I'd be able to afford a house. So so those little dreams right there, I mean, that's been huge, and they're very materialistic in a way, but um, I'm also very grateful because in that place of addiction and alcoholism, I was very alone. I was dishonest with myself. I was dishonest with everyone around me, my family, my colleagues, my professors. I just um, I was alone. And now I live a life where I'm vulnerable with others. I have these intimate relationships with people, women. I never really was a girl's girl before. I was always like one of the dudes. And so now I have, a sisterhood, and I have God in my life, and I have a healthy partner. And that's just a miracle itself.
Yeah.
And I love that I can, do my job now and not feel guilt or shame.
Mhm.
And moving forward, I still have dreams about soccer. It's kind of funny. I had one the other night and I didn't even think about it until you brought that up. But yeah, I'm like on the field scoring a hat trick, and I'm definitely not doing that these days. But um, I love that I can still be involved with soccer, and it's not the center of my life anymore, but
Mhm.
it's still a big part of my life.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, those are ways that things have shifted, and and I've never would have even dreamed I was living this kind of life, and it
Mhm.
seems like a simple life that most humans achieve, but not for this gal.
It came at no small price.
No.
If you're to look down at your knee, you'll see a surgical scar. Your hip bears a physical scar. Sometimes in pursuit of big dreams, we encounter things we wouldn't have chosen, that surgery or that reconstruction, those kinds of things. Other times it's mental.
Uh-huh.
The scars we bear exist only in our own mind. If you could go back in time and talk to Morgan without the scars, what would you tell her?
That's a fun question. Um, Morgan without scars was very impulsive, so she wasn't scared to make mistakes. And it's interesting. I don't want to tell myself what not to do or what to do because I wouldn't be who I am today, right? So I would just encourage Morgan back then, not to be afraid to make mistakes, but to learn from those mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes. And you have nothing to be ashamed of. You have nothing to be guilty of. Just, keep learning and growing from those mistakes as you experience life.
Yeah,
I think that's what I would tell her.
that's such a healthy viewpoint. Like, I love the fact that the perfectionism isn't there,
Yeah.
because that's a lonely place. That is a self-destructive place. But in giving yourself permission to learn from things that weren't exactly right, maybe just wrong time, maybe wrong choice, whatever, there's growth there. I can
Mhm.
remember my very first interview for a graduate assistantship, and I'll go ahead and name drop. I still hate them to this day because they didn't give me the job, but I interviewed at Auburn, a
Okay.
phone interview with Auburn University, and I don't blame them for not hiring me now that I kind of deconstruct it, because I, I don't remember the question, but my answer was, I've never failed. I don't know how to fail. If you hire me there, I will bring success. I'm going to win. I win in everything I do. Just this idea, this naive notion of I'm going to will my way to success. That kind of mindset is dangerous. Um, a person that hasn't failed hasn't been trying to do the right things. And,
Mm.
and, and the fact that you have been through what you've been through, and your perspective on it is, I wouldn't trade any of it because it would jeopardize who I am, where I am, with whom I'm with. And that's as healthy as it can be. I'm so proud of you for recognizing those needs, but also recognizing that the scars along the way are fundamental to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. Getting to talk with Morgan Detrixhe, athletic trainer and just all around awesome person. I
Thank you, I still call you Dr. Brooks,
you
Toby.
can call me Toby. That's fine. But, it's all good. You you kind of alluded to this in your sisterhood and in talking about family. What role did community play in your healing?
Community, like these
Just
days, now,
yeah,
currently.
just the fact of the matter is, a lot of times perfectionists think they've got to fix it on their own, and
Hmm.
there's a social aspect to healing as well. So, uh, talk to me a little bit about how the people around you have helped empower your success.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the very beginning, I was scared, in fear, terrified, emotional, just crying all the time. And these women, they just lifted me up and they said, "Let us love you until you can love yourself."
Mm,
They literally said that. And and I was in a place where I didn't have that kind of intimate, I had my mom. I know my mom loved me very much and my sister, but you, they didn't know the dark and the pain like I was experiencing. These women had been through it. They've been there and they've grown from it and they had each other to lean on and then they were there for me, and yeah, without them that would have who knows,
yeah,
what would have happened without them. So I'm very grateful to them and now, as I can be one of those ladies for the next person that's there struggling in fear, putting my arms around them and saying, "Hey, it's okay." You know. Um I think that's a big part of being of service to the community that I didn't have beforehand, and I'm very grateful for that, and that's something I take a lot of my free time. I had one girl tell me she's like 20 years old and she wasn't ready to accept sobriety yet, but hopefully I planted a seed. But she was like, "So what do you do for fun?" And I'm like, "This is what I do for fun." And she's like, "You're kidding me. This is not fun." And I'm like, "No, I love it. Like I love it."
yeah,
So that's I feel like part of my purpose too, is just to be there for the next person, the next woman that's reaching out for a hand for
yeah,
assistance.
yeah. I've consistently heard that from folks in recovery. Just that notion that, what are you going to fill that with? What provides that release or that relief or other things. So I love that. I've heard it said that when words aren't enough, we sing. Music oftentimes expresses emotions that a lot of other things just can't. If we were to
Mm.
watch a montage of Morgan's life, what song would you pick to play in the background and why?
Oh, wow. Okay, what song? Um, oh, I don't I have a deep love. My dad raised me on rock and roll,
Hmm.
so I'm thinking of, like, the Who songs right now, like, "Who Are You?" That kinda song,
Yeah, yeah.
and then I don't know if you know much about, like, EDM,
A
electronic dance music.
little bit.
There's
Yeah,
there's a little bit of that coming in, because it's fun and it's upbeat,
yeah, yeah.
Um You know that song by The Who, Eminence is it Font? Eminence Font?
I think so.
I don't know, I just like the tempo, and in the beginning, there's not a lot of lyrics, and
Hmm.
so something with um, that kind of vibe. I
Yeah.
don't know. I can't think of one
No,
specifically, but
no, it's all good. I have a mixtape. Basically, it's a Spotify playlist that I put together of all the songs that
yeah.
my guests pick, and so we've got that available. Well, if folks want to follow what you're doing,
Mhm.
point me in the right direction. Where could I point them toward to you and maybe your socials and things like that?
Yeah, my socials, my Instagram, my Facebook, my email, mndtree@gmail.com. And I'm okay with my phone number being out there too, 945-249-0687. If anyone wants to reach out and they have questions or whatever, um, I'm happy to help
That's
in any
awesome.
way I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What for Morgan remains undone?
Um, it sounds cheesy, but being a mom, I'm excited to grow a future with my partner and be a mom and raise kids. And what will that look like? I have no idea. He's like, "How many kids do you want?" I'm like, "4 boys." He's like, "Okay, let's start with 1." Um,
I
but yeah.
routinely pull my phone out as I'm scrolling social media, and I'll share my wife. I'm like, "Here's another MAT grandbaby," children
Oh,
of my students. So
yeah.
we don't have any of our own, but I'm living vicariously through my students now. The Sansings, I see their infant pigs, and there's
Yes.
a few in your class that have some little ones running around. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, last little bit. I always stitch this in. If you could just introduce yourself and say, "And I am undone."
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Detrixhe, and I am undone. I can redo that if
Okay,
you
go
want.
ahead. Yep,
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Detrixhe, and I am undone.
that's awesome. All right, I'll stop it right there.